You've tuned into the Bham Podcast for the week of April 28th, 2019. This is episode, let me get this right, 115. From that city by the Salish Sea, I am AJ Barce.
And straight out of 92.26, I am Chris Powell. On this episode, good things come in threes. Haven't you heard that before? Well, in this case for me, I get a chance to have a third interview with a wonderful executive director from a nonprofit here in Bellingham. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation. This is the Bham Podcast.
I smell spring in the air. How you doing, Chris?
I smell fresh air, AJ. How are you doing?
Not so bad, not so bad. I'm loving the fact that it's actually April showers are seemingly bringing May flowers.
They are. It's looking pretty beautiful out there. And the Skagit County Tulip Festival, as the time of this recording, is in full-on bloom. Pun definitely intended. And,
I get it. Bloom.
Yes. Anywho,
Anyway,
yes. We're not quitting our day jobs, folks. Don't worry. So how things been for you?
I've been doing good. Just doing some local travel, doing the local tourist thing. How about you, man of the airs?
Well, so we had a station break last week for those who have the feeds in their podcast weapon of choice. And if you have us in your podcast app, thank you very much for subscribing to us. I went to a technology-based conference for work in Las Vegas. God help me.
Viva Las Vegas.
Something like that. That's actually a happy song that I kind of like. And funny thing, it was played everywhere you went. Yes. Can I just say, for those of you that are listening here in Bellingham, Washington, Whatcom County, heck, the state of Washington, count your blessings. Let's just count our blessings about how nice and enjoyable this area is. There's one thing that I noticed in Las Vegas that overrides everything else. It wasn't quiet. I was bombarded with noise everywhere. Yeah, and I'm getting really good at blocking out advertisements in my life, visually and technologically. I could not block out the noise. I had to put my AirPods in, and
shades.
And I unfortunately I'm in an era now where I'm wearing eyeglasses, so I did not wear shades.
Oh.
But I could not handle the oral AURAL assault that was Las Vegas everywhere I went. And so while I made it through the conference and learned a little bit here and there, it's so nice to be back in Bellingham. So anyway, we're back on the stick.
Yeah.
And now, we've had the mini-series from the Watch Fam and been kind of building little by little about, I don't know what we're going to call this.
It's your bit, so what do you want to call it?
Well, we'll call it Chris's bit. I've had an opportunity to sit down and have some conversations with some fine executive directors of nonprofit organizations here in Bellingham, Washington, and Whatcom County. I had a chance to interview Miss Moonwater from the Whatcom Dispute Resolution Center. Check out episode 14? Well, that was 13. It may have been a couple. Look in our past show archives. And the second one I had a chance just recently with Hans Erchinger Davis.
Hi, Hans.
Hello, Hans, the executive director of the Lighthouse Mission Ministries here in Bellingham. Next on the agenda is a fine person named Emily O'Connor, who is the executive director of Lydia Place, where every family deserves a home if you check out their website. Lydia Place is based in Bellingham, and this is a part of the show, AJ, where I normally go into a little bit of background. Mm-hmm. Let's not worry about that.
Okay.
Why don't we go straight into the interview and we can catch up on some things later on. But sit back, enjoy, grab your beverage, or if you're in your car listening to this, keep both hands on the wheel. Let's have a conversation with Emily O'Connor from Lydia Place. So I'm here in Primer Coffee here in Bellingham, one of Whatcom County's finer coffee establishments, with Emily O'Connor, who's the executive director of Lydia Place in Bellingham. Emily, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
We need to ask, since we're coffee fans, what are you drinking right now?
I am drinking what I always drink, which is a decaf Americano.
Okay.
And it's got a splash of some non-dairy, some substance in it.
Non-dairy.
Which here is oat.
Okay.
And oat is sort of it's all the rage now. So I'm trying to stay current on my non-dairy milk.
Well, good on you for doing that. I'm drinking just a straight up mocha with caffeine because I'm typically caffeinated. Yes. Yeah. So even though this year, 2019, marks the 30th anniversary of Lydia Place, congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
There are still some folks in Bellingham who have not heard of your organization yet. So how would you describe Lydia Place to someone unfamiliar with how your nonprofit works?
That's a great question. Yeah. And you're right. Not everybody is familiar with Lydia Place, although they should be. So Lydia Place, what I usually like to talk about is that we are within the sphere of homelessness and trying to address homelessness and really focused on solutions that break that cycle. And for us, that means investing particularly heavily in families with young children, because we know we see that cycle continue, right? And if we want healthy communities, we have to invest in our kids today,
yes,
so that they can be healthy adults whenever that is, whether that's 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, right?
It seems logical, yes.
It does, yeah. And it is so logical. It's like common sense, right? Invest in the health of our kids. But we have so many kids in our communities that are really, really struggling, everything from basic needs, food, shelter, to that emotional nurturance that they need to really develop into resilient, healthy kiddos and adults.
Resilience, I think, could be a very helpful thing for many people involved, not just kiddos, but also grown-ups as well.
Oh, my goodness,
in this current stage. So according to your website, this past decade has shown a lot of changes for Lydia Place, not just the transitional housing program that y'all have provided for so long. There's now the Supportive Services Program, the Whatcom Homeless Services Center Program, and the Emergency House. So how have these new services been progressing for folks here in Whatcom County? How's that been going for y'all?
Yeah, so we really have been focusing on increasing the number of housing units that we have within our fold. And so we focus on, you can think of sort of 3 different housing areas. So the first is our family housing program, which is really all about families with children who are experiencing homelessness. And embedded in that program is about 125 housing units at any given time. And so that might be a mix of transitional housing, permanent housing. It includes our partnership with Bellingham Housing Authority, which has 79 units set aside for families exiting homelessness. And so that is really an anchoring program for us. And we want to have a very diverse array of housing options because everybody experiencing homelessness has a different need. And so we like to have a unique array within that. And then our second housing program is really made up of housing units that we own. And Lydia Place owns 3 different properties. And so those properties are dedicated to homeless mothers with children who are experiencing homelessness.
Okay.
And again, that investment in the young kiddos.
Yes.
And the third housing program we operate is a housing program for individuals or families that don't have children. And there's a huge need for that as well in our community. And so those are kind of our 3 distinct areas of housing. And the other services that we've launched in recent years really work toward providing that wraparound supportive care that folks need. Because for us, success is not just are you housed or not, it's are you thriving, right? Are you really thriving?
Yep.
Yeah. And that's what we want. And so it wouldn't be reasonable if we just put people in housing and walked away and expected that their life would all of a sudden be different. It wouldn't be different, right? They would just have housing.
That's easy in a 30-minute episode of a TV show, but not in real life.
That's right. Yeah, they need so much more than that. So that's where our parenting programs come in. We have a number of evidence-based parenting programs, and then we also have our clinical mental health team. We do community building events, and all of those services are designed to be in-home so that they can really reduce some of the barriers to accessing services outside and really tailored to meet the needs of the families that we're working with.
That's fabulous. So speaking of community events, in addition to the Hearts for Housing Annual Benefit Gala, which y'all have, Lydia Place has other events in the year, such as the Children's Pop-Up Shop. Now, I think at this time of this will be recorded, that will already have concluded. We're recording in advance. But this is at Wise Buys here in town. There's an Art for Housing event, I think, coming up soon. I'll verify the date, and I'll add this at the end of our show, at the Sylvia Center for the Arts.
That's right,
May 3rd, very good. And Handbags for Housing event at the Barclay Village Green in June.
June 6th.
June 6th. So how are these events going as far as creating or strengthening connections with Lydia Place and the community?
Yeah, that's such a wonderful question. Lydia Place is a bit unique in that every year about 55% of our entire budget comes from individuals and businesses in the community. So we are, unlike some of our sister organizations where the most of their funds come from government, which has a lot of requirements and rules and regulations, we are able to be really adaptive because we have these resources that come from the community. And the events that you mentioned are part of that continuing relationship with the community. So we're really dependent on these partnerships to be creative and responsive to the changing need. For example, last year, we have a commitment to no kids in cars.
Okay.
We don't want children waking up and trying to go to school from a car. As a mother myself, I can tell you it is so hard to get 3 kids out of the house. And I have every resource at my fingertips, right? And if you can imagine, trying to do that when where you've spent all night is in the car and it's cold and you don't have clean clothes and good food and places to go to the bathroom, I can't even imagine. This is what families are actually experiencing. So we have a commitment, no kids in cars. And last year, we provided just under 2,000 bed nights of emergency housing for families with children experiencing homelessness in our local motels here.
Okay.
And that was about $45,000 that didn't exist in our budget. So these events and these partnerships with the community allow us to do those things, to say yes and to do the right thing when we're presented with a situation that, really requires the right thing.
Absolutely. Doing the right thing is where everything's at in what we do. As a mom with the daily challenge, both you and your hubby, to get the kids out the door for school and or to get them all rustled out of bed. What are some other challenges you face as an executive director of a large nonprofit here in Bellingham and as a co-executive director of a family complete with husband and kiddos? I just feel so fortunate to be in this role and to be doing this job. It is such a privilege to do this work. And what's lovely about that is that everywhere I turn, there are good humans trying to make the world a better place. And so in the really hard times, it's that carries me through those things. Flexibility is critical in this work, and certainly as a working mother, flexibility is really live and breathe and die by flexibility, right? And funding is always a challenge. There's never enough resources. We've seen just in the last couple of months here in Whatcom County, we saw our waiting list for families with children experiencing homelessness double. And that's really unfortunate. We had been making really steady ground toward eliminating that waiting list and getting to what's called functional zero. And in the last couple of months, we've just seen that progress really turn on its heels. And, that is, it's painful to see, right? And I mean, we see the problem of homelessness is visible in our communities, but there's also this hugely invisible portion of the homeless population. So resources are always a challenge. Yeah. Always a challenge. Absolutely. And so tough to be able to get that magic wand or that one all silver bullet solution. It's coming from so many areas all at once. So after all the success that Lydia Place has had over 3 decades, where do you see things headed for your nonprofit as we approach a new decade, the roaring 20s, if you will?
Mm-hmm. Yes, roaring 20s. This is a really critical time in our communities to make a decision about how we want to be going forward. And Lydia Place is looking forward to being a part of that conversation. We are thoroughly invested in making sure that the children in our housing programs today are the last generation in their family to experience homelessness. We know that we need to do a lot more investing in young families to make sure that as communities, we don't have to keep building bigger jails and bigger shelters, right? And the problems that we see today are the result of a failure on our part to engage in the right services at the right time. And so Lydia Place wants to continue to be a part of that conversation about what role can we play in that. We'd love to see an elimination of that waiting list, particularly for homeless families with children, but we also have hundreds of individuals without children who are on that waiting list. So we need more housing in our community. We need more affordable housing in our community. And then we have a critical need for appropriate behavioral and mental health services, and addiction services, recovery support, and all of that. What really is underscored for me is the idea of prevention, because these issues are so much harder. It's so much harder to fix once you're in it than it is to invest appropriately on the front end and prevent. Right? So if we take care of the kids today, if we make sure that they have access to housing and supportive environments and parents with support, and access to education and good food, then we have much less of a problem to deal with on the back end, which is what we're doing now.
That's great. So I'm going to play a role. I'm someone who's listening to this show, and I'm hearing what y'all are doing for the first time, and I'm inspired. Who wouldn't be, right, folks? Anyway,
that's great.
But I want to be able to help, and I don't know where to begin. I'm not sure where I could Google your website and such, but how would you suggest someone get involved, or what can they do to help with, such a kind of increase in what has happened lately, and or how to help Lydia Place?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's no end to the ways that you can help. So there's obvious ways that you can help, which is come and volunteer your time or talents, or sign up for a one-time or a monthly donation. Those really help us be able to commit to helping people pay rent for the long term. So there's always a benefit there. We also really believe that every person in our community has a role to play in making this the community that we all want to live in. And so that means participating in what's happening in our local cities and in our county around policy work, around housing, zoning, places that issues that really impact housing and affordability, issues that impact children and their well-being, prevention, education, childcare. So participating, right? Really thinking about what are your values as a community member in Whatcom County? What is the type of community that you want to see? Having conversations with your neighbors and friends about the issues of homelessness. It's easy to be really, to judge what we see. Right? It's easy to look at what we see on the streets and have a lot of judgment about that. Sure. But it's so much more complicated than the things that we see on the street. And at the end of the day, these are all human beings, and we all want each other to be healthy and happy and thriving. Yes. So there is a role for each of us to play in making this community what we want, and we're happy to be the first stop or the last stop or one of 50 of your stops in your journey to participating in this great community.
Very good. So Emily, I'm going to put you on the spot here like I did with some of the other executive directors. So
great.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So AJ and I often share places around Bellingham that are our, quote, secret weapons. So my question for you, Emily, is where is your favorite spot in Bellingham or Whatcom County to get a bite to eat?
A bite to eat. Well, I am very fond of Keenan's. I love their fish tacos, and you can't argue with the view.
Oh, no, not at all. At the Chrysalis, right?
Yep, that's right. And I also am a big fan of Brandywine.
Ah, yes, downtown.
I have celiac, so I'm allergic to gluten. Okay. And Brandywine is the only place I've ever found that I can have gluten-free fish and chips. So thank you to Brandywine for gluten-free fish and chips.
Excellent.
Yep.
And so how about a place where you need to recharge your internal batteries when the work and or family life gets your tank running on empty? Where do you go?
That doesn't happen, not the empty part, but the recharging part. So I do love yoga.
Okay.
So 3 Ohms yoga.
Uh-huh.
And that is definitely, if I could, it's been a little bit hard to get to yoga since my youngest was born 14 months ago. But one of these days, Chris, I'm going to get back into the studio. So
very good.
Yes.
That's a good way to be able to have a low impact workout that anyone can do. Yes. Stretching and or other things. My wife does yoga, and I'm confounded by the poses y'all put yourself through.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's fun to do with the kids too, and they have a good time.
Very good. Well, Emily O'Connor, thank you so much for joining us on the Bam Podcast, and continued success in 2019 and for the years in the new decade.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thanks for having me.
big thanks to Emily O'Connor from Lydia Place here in Bellingham for a wonderful conversation.
So another executive director with a little bit of a coffee tie. You were in Primer.
Primer Coffee in Bellingham, right next to Elizabeth Station. A big shout out to our barista extraordinaire, Mark. Thanks very much for whipping up a great beverage for both Emily and myself. We had a great conversation and a great cuppa.
A great cuppa.
For those of you that are still interested in checking out Lydia Place, they have an upcoming event for the month of May. They have Art for Housing. I think we mentioned that in the interview briefly. May 3rd, which is coming up on Friday soon, if you're listening to this right when it gets released. But anyway,
as you should.
As you should. It's at the Sylvia Center for the Arts on 205 Prospect Street, thank you very much, which is right next to another nonprofit we just interviewed.
Hi, Moonwater.
Hello, Miss Moonwater, WDRC. So anyway, check out the Art for Housing, in which they are going to have an opening night celebration of art and live theater for this year's fundraiser, sponsored by the Ben Kinney Companies, et cetera, pre-show silent auction, art exhibition, and much, much fun.
Yeah.
So check that out. AJ, changing a subject, because while we love talking about wonderful, great things that are going on,
we should call that bit of yours Community Connections.
Community Connections. I think that will roll just fine.
Hopefully there's no trademarks or patent pendings on that, so we'll roll with that one.
For now, until we get a takedown notice, we'll do that. So anyway, I've kind of gone off the rails on a technological crazy train lately.
Did you do this at the conference? What is the techno crazy trains?
Well, so here's the thing. We've danced around the importance of strong passwords on our online accounts.
I don't know what you're talking about. I just use password 1234 on everything, right?
We'll pray for you. Anyway, no, I've been using a password manager, and that is a piece of software that stores all of your usernames, passwords, and sites that autofills this information when you visit it.
Yeah, that's the notepad I keep on my unpinned password phone, so that I can quickly access it. Right. Right.
So I've danced around this idea. What if every online account that I have for both myself and my family had a unique email address and a unique password that was over 25 characters long?
Wow. I have nothing smarmy to say about that. That just sounds really locked down.
We have our Gmail accounts. We have our Outlook accounts. We have Yahoo accounts, if you still have those. All of these websites have the same username. And if you use the same username and password on different sites, it's not a matter of if a site's going to get hacked. It's a matter of when, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. If they get this downloaded information of username and passwords and get your password, what did you have? Password 123?
1234, because I like to be a little bit more secure than
yes,
that, Chris.
We'll make it a 12-character password, right? Yes. All right. They can apply that to other sites, and then, oh dear, you got some. You're
compromised again.
You're in some deep kimchi, as I like to put it.
Sure.
So I want to go on the other side of that spectrum, where if a site gets hacked, they could get that username and password, and once we receive notification of it, I know how to quickly change a password to another 25 plus character alphanumeric. Oh my gosh, crack this password, or at least try to. But the email address, if it's unique,
you can just kill the email as well as the password.
It's not related to any other website. How is he doing that, you might be asking? Well, maybe in a future episode, we'll kind of take a little deep dive into the nerd pool, and I can show you or tell you at least a couple tools that I'm using online to be able to have one central password manager where I have to memorize count on one password.
The big bouncer.
The big bouncer in front of the vault or the club with all the other usernames and passwords. And a online site that allows me to have what could be considered masked emails. Stay tuned for another, take a deep dive into the nerd pool.
Yeah, we haven't done the nerd pool in a while. That's nice. I'll go get my floaties.
Yes, indeed. That's floaties with the at 123 on the end of it, right?
Oh, that's a really good password. Let me write that down in front of everybody.
There you go. AJ, what have you been working on lately?
Not anything like that. I have been thoroughly in trying to enjoy spring as much as possible in between rain showers, and doing something that I might be doing in a later episode as well. Local tourism, being a local. But doing what the tourists would, quote, do in your area.
Huh, really?
Yeah, so like we went down to Point Defiance.
Yes.
No, not the zoo, but actual Point Defiance. And walk around there and walking around the trail system that's actually down there.
That's in the South Sound area.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. And so I did that. And then also Easter weekend, we went up north to YVR, Vancouver. Sub Vancouver.
Hello, Vancouver.
And checked out this really cool, if you haven't done this and you need a really cool either family date or even date weekend event, go up to Vancouver. And you're going to go to Van Dusen Botanical Gardens and Queen Elizabeth Park. They're kind of on kitty corner blocks. And it is you can make an all-day affair out of it. It's like a miniature, and I'm putting that in air quotes, Bouchard Gardens.
Really?
Yeah. No, it's huge. So you've got like different kind of gardens. There's a heck of a view that because it's perched on top of like this overlook, and you can look into Vancouver and stuff. If you are used to like the Portland area, there's I think it's Pitcock Manor over in Portland, where it has that similar view where you can just see the city. And then you've got all these different gardens. There's I call it the Biodome. I can't remember what the proper name. Conservatory, I think.
It's a friendly term for it.
Yeah. It's a big domey thing with like wildlife and like vegetation. So anyway, it's a couple of bucks to get into there. But what's cool about their Biodome, that's what I'm going to call it, is that they have free flying exotic birds like parrots and like other really cool, colorful birds. I'm not an avian enthusiast, and I don't play one on podcasts, but there's a lot of pretty birds there. And so it's like $5 or $6. I think kids under 4 are free type of thing. So it's cool. While you're doing it's a smaller dome. It's not, if you're used to other domes in the US, it's a good size, but they also have like this, like avian, bingo card, so you can go around and make sure that you see all the species, and it's kind of a little gamification. But yeah, and we went up there for Easter because for like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of Easter weekend, there is just like every hour on the hour a huge egg extravaganza Easter egg hunt. And so of course we took the little kiddo up there, and you basically go to each area within the gardens. They find 2 eggs, they put it in their basket, and they redeem it for a big chocolate bunny at the end. It's a couple bucks to, I think it's like $25 to enter as a family type of a thing. And it was great. We spent most of the day up there.
I'm listening to you describe this, and of course I'm intrigued. Yeah. And I'm thinking what a wonderful opportunity for all of our listeners that are around the area to maybe give this a try. I'm sensing a summer series.
Maybe.
We're going to talk about this off the air and see if this might, regional tourist traps to maybe talk about that on the show.
Yeah. Something coming soon. So this is, if you haven't figured out, this latter part of the episode is the teaser.
Yes, exactly. Because if we're going to say we're going to do something, by cracky, we're going to do it.
We'll do it.
Anyway, let's wrap this thing up.
Cool. That wraps up this edition of the Bellingham Podcast. Thank you again so much for listening to us, rating us, reviewing us, wherever you like to get our podcast. Remember, if you're in the Bellingham area, you might be listening to us on KMRE 102.3 FM.
Community powered.
Low power community radio here in the heart of the city of subdued excitement.
They're going on a change. They've got a little bit of a change. They're community powered now.
Oh yeah, that's right. So yeah, what's up, KMRE?
Hello, KMRE.
So we're gonna have to. Dude, for like 115 episodes, I've said the same ding dong thing. It's gonna take time. I gotta embrace the change.
So from 116 on, we'll adjust accordingly.
Yeah. So coming soon, I'll have a new shtick at the end, but it doesn't matter. Happy spring, everyone. I'm AJ Barsay.
And I'm Chris Powell. Thanks once again for joining us on the Bellingham Podcast.
Community powered. We got to figure out the up down like we do with low power.
Community powered.